There was the introductory sip. I also have a cup of coffee or whatever you're currently enjoying as well.
Very nice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, welcome everybody to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I'm delighted to be having, it's actually late morning here, late morning coffee with comics creator Matt Idelson. Matt, thank you for jumping in and joining.
Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure.
Nice
It's
to
a
get out.
pleasure. What's that?
I said it's so nice to get out. It's so
It
rare.
is. Yes, yes, absolutely. It's nice and sunny out here. The wind is just very pleasant. Absolutely. So you've worked in a variety of titles and with a variety of creators, and I'll just mention about nine here at the beginning because there are what like hundreds that I could mention. Uh,
Hmm.
007, Darkwing Duck, Elvira, being some of those recent titles. You have an impressive run on Action Comics. There's some Avengers in there, Animal Man, and then a couple of my favorite Batman titles, Batman the Ankh, and then I'm also an Elseworlds fan, so Batman meeting Tarzan was a big deal to me as well. So those are just a few of the highlights, a few of them.
And yet you remember more than I do.
I was going to say, are there any that stand out that I missed on that list?
It's hard to answer that, to be honest with you, without inadvertently offending somebody.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
So I love them all. They're all my children. How
Great,
about that?
great. That's a very, very diplomatic answer. I love that. Love it.
I
Uh,
mean, most of them involve paternity suits, but nonetheless.
Yes, yes, but they're still your children, and now you have proof. So that's
Yeah.
great.
Hmm.
That's right. Uh,
Hey.
uh, well, what made comics sort of the space that you knew that you wanted to create in and be in?
Um, Seeing John Romita Sr.'s work in the Spider-Man strip, this was in the very early 70s. Yes, I am old. And I couldn't read yet, but the art, it wasn't like cartoon and goofy kind of non-serious stuff. It just felt like it had a gravity to it and something important was happening. And I mean, the visuals and the action were so great that I just, not that I was thinking all this, but I was just like, oh, what's that? And I couldn't read, but I knew I liked it. I didn't understand how he could have half his Spider-Man mask on and no one knew his identity, but I kind of puzzled that out later. And honestly, then I got pulled into like Apartment 3G before I figured out it was a soap opera.
Yeah,
And if I
yeah.
squinted, maybe Mike Nomad and Steve Roper or whatever that was called, but it was just, it felt more interesting and important and immediate. And it just grabbed me in a way that like Garfield or Mutt and Jeff just wasn't going to.
Hmm. Hmm.
And once I learned to read, then it really sucks you in because back then, like every issue ended with a cliffhanger.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, so what was it like to sort of go from reader that way to working in the professional field and working as an editor?
I started as an intern at Marvel, and that was exciting and humbling, and at the same time, really eye-opening because you start to sort of, I'm near the end of college at that point, so you're starting to realize people work kind of differently than they have the people you've interacted with up to this point in your life.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you start to see more and more of either people that are kind of letting it go to their head, which was kind of disappointing, whether it was editors or freelancers, but it was also super exciting because some of the people, creator wise and editor wise, were like, this is exactly what it sounded like in the letters page. This is great. So it was both, I guess, it was exciting, but you kind of learned quickly if you were smart what not to do,
Hmm. Hmm.
how not to act, and just to kind of keep a low profile.
Yeah. Any things that you've learned, tips or secrets for working with creatives as an editor?
Yeah, just they're going to be as varied as any other group of people that you're dealing with. It's not special. People are like, oh, creative people are crazy. And yeah, a lot of creative people through history have been crazy. But I mean, a lot of I've worked for executives that were not at all creative who were outright crazy. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
it's not limited. Don't just sort of go, well, artists are like this and writers are like this, because it's just assume there's some vulnerability because they're putting their work out there to be judged, especially in this day and age. And also remember, they're going to have a whole lot of baggage. And it's taken me 53 years to sort of figure out introspection and to start to figure myself out. Why are they going to be any further ahead? So it's just, you got to roll with their quirks, figure out how they can be comfortable. Remember, you're human beings, and just try to build a relationship and not take anything personally.
Yeah. Yeah, nice, nice. Being a human being as an editor, that's a lovely idea. Love that.
Yeah, yeah, I may try it sometime.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this might be one of those questions that would be dangerous to leave someone out, but I'm curious about, and maybe we can draw some boundaries around it even to make it a little more comfortable. But collaborations that have been meaningful, and we can go recent collaborations that you've really enjoyed, or you're welcome to take that apart any way you'd like.
Um, again, I'm not going to name specific creators or projects because then again, I'm elevating. I know that sounds crappy, but generally speaking, the better the book, the more rewarding the collaboration was. And there's titles that I mean, I've been doing this for 31 years or whatever, so there's a lot of not good stuff out there, obviously, just by the demands of monthly commercial art and being in companies with, layoffs and bankruptcy, and then
Mhm,
another
mhm.
company, oh, we're going to go to California. So you find the balance, but the really good stuff usually is because you were able to find some really good accord across the entire team, and those are the most rewarding
Yeah,
ones because you can tell everyone's on the same page, having fun, even if it's a serious topic in the story. It's just everybody's just going in there and finding a way to put their egos aside enough to do something good together.
yeah, yeah. Very, very well said. Very well said. Any mentors or folks that were especially helpful and have been supportive along the journey?
Yeah, Mary McFerrin was the first person to hire. She was working for Tom DeFalco, and she was really supportive and wonderful. And then I got hired by Ralph Macchio,
Mhm,
and in that case, you're sort of given the opportunity to sink or swim on your own. So there were people I would ask questions of, primarily probably Bob Harris. He just seemed to know the right answers. He had worked for Ralph back in the day before he discovered ties, and he kind of knew the way to navigate it. And here's how you handle this. And it was a position. So he was big. I knew the position. At least the one guy before me had been fired, maybe more, because you're doing so much of the stuff that it can go to your head and you can go, why am I not getting promoted? Why
mhm, mhm.
does he still have a job? And it's like, nah, you just have this opportunity. Just if you don't know the answer, ask somebody. And that was generally who I turned to most of the time, him and Mark Powers.
Nice. Nice. And I imagine it's been rewarding, and you've had some of those experiences to then be the mentor as well.
Yeah, when you were talking about collaboration, honestly, some of the most rewarding are just with the staffers that I was lucky enough to hire over the years. I really can't think of anybody I hired that was a lemon.
Yeah.
And there was always a fun give and take because I tried to hire people that didn't complement my strengths, but complemented my weaknesses. And then I try to teach them my strengths and learn from their weaknesses or lean on them to help me. Like I suck at cover composition. It's too late. I'm not going to get better at it. I'm terrible at it. Please, it gives me hives. It never looks good. But I had hired people who were artists as assistants or who had that background or at least had the eye needing refining, but had the eye, which I don't. So I could learn from them and lean on them. And that was always very rewarding because they're learning in this, they're growing, they start contributing more and more.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. Well, anything that currently has your creative focus that you're really excited that you'd like to mention about, as well as spaces where you like to connect with listeners out there, online conventions, things like that.
As far as excited, there's so many things I want to mention that aren't announced, so I can't, and it's just
Sure,
kind of
sure.
making me sad. I almost bailed out of this because of that. I think Johnny Quest right now, that at least has been announced, and we did
Yeah.
the lead-in story for Free Comic Book Day, and that is as much as good as the book looks and reads. It's as much fun to watch them coming together. That's an example where that team is just so good together that they don't really need me, which is kind of nice, and I don't feel a need to have one note or two notes to justify my existence. So that book is just it's a wonderful thing to watch it come together because these guys know what they're doing, and it's just clicking in that way that it rarely does.
Hmm, hmm.
That'd be
Nice.
one. Vampirella with Christopher Priest has just been a lot of fun because these days you don't usually get to work for more than 6 or 12 issues with somebody, and then you're resetting and rebooting. And regrouping or whatever. But, I've been working with them since 2019. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I am old. And we've got our plans through the storyline that kicks off with 675, and we're only like sending 660, 670 to the printer, 669. So, well, I can't go into detail. I'm pretty excited about watching things build, get resolved, new things start that might build on earlier, but you don't know it till later and how it all connects.
Love
And
it,
it's just
love
an
it.
extreme,
Yeah,
that's a lot of fun.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at my list because I can't keep track anymore.
How many titles are
Yeah, that's
you
all I can.
how many are you working on at a single time, if you don't mind me asking, on average?
Like 10 to 12 things
Wow. Yeah.
the last few
Yeah.
years. But some of that is like I'm working on one thing I know is going to be a mini series of Red Sonja, and I'm also working on the next mini series for that slot for Red Sonja. So there's some doubling up. They're like different books, even though technically they're not separate titles. But
Hmm.
I'm working on something for next year at the same time I'm working on something for now. So it's a little head spinning, but that's why you get the number that you get. It's not that I'm putting out 12 titles a month.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Very cool. The last part of that was spaces where people can connect, kind of follow the work, any
Right.
go-to spaces online in person or anything like that.
I honestly don't know. We were able to interact with fans online when I was at Marvel, and it was like an AOL chat room thing
Uh-huh.
or
Uh-huh.
message boards. When I got to DC, nobody really in the industry knew what we wanted to do because letters pages were becoming increasingly less relevant, but no
Mm,
one knew how to connect exactly. Um, and then once DC kind of became about one or two people, there was just not going to be. So it's been so long, I really don't know what people prefer, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or you tell me,
yeah.
I
Well,
get
for
messages
me,
from people on through LinkedIn, Facebook, et cetera. So I guess whatever suits your fancy, and I'll try to get back to you within a reasonable amount of time.
yeah, yeah. Well, in the midst of all the work you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And plus real life, which
Yes.
just doesn't seem to take a break for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Instagram seems to be a nice space just to go and look at nice things, look at
Yeah.
art, enjoy some interaction, not get in too many arguments. And LinkedIn is a cool thing too.
Yeah. I try to avoid the arguments because I just don't see the point.
Same, same,
So
absolutely.
if you want to contact me and tell me you thought a book sucked and why, I'm cool with that. If you just tell me the book sucked and I sucked and my mother sucked for having me, that's not really, I'm not going to answer you because it's not particularly constructive. Maybe I can learn something about why you thought it sucked as opposed to. So be kind. Please
Yeah,
rewind. Yeah.
absolutely. Good advice anytime, anytime.
Hmm.
Well, have we missed anything that you want to make sure to mention before we close out?
I don't think so. I hope this was worth your time. That if you
Absolutely.
think of any follow-ups, please feel free to ask me. But I think my agenda is covered.
Yes, awesome, awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear about the things that are up on the board that can't be named yet. Excited to see the announcements of those, and seems to be an exciting time for bringing back some really interesting stories. You're talking about Johnny Quest, so I'm excited to see that and other things come to be.
Awesome. Hope you like them when they come out.
I'm sure I will. Sure I will. Thank you so much, Matt. Hope you have a good rest of the day and enjoy the rest of the morning coffee.
All right. May divorce be with you always.